Hi guys, my name is Destiny and welcome back to another video in the to-do list tutorial using Django and React. And on this one, we're going to go ahead and start working with listing out all the to-dos that we have in our database onto the front end. That's what we're going to be doing. Hopefully you guys will like and enjoy the video. Do make sure to drop a like, consider subscribing, as it really means the world to me. So let's go ahead and get started. Now the first thing I'm going to do is open up my code editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code, and from the last video we stopped at simply setting up our template, and that's pretty much everything that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and run my project just one more time. I'm going to run npm start over here, and for this one I'm going to run, okay, I think before we do that we need to cd into backend and run python manage.py run server. And for this one you need to cd into front end, then you need to run npm start. All right, so while these are starting, let's go ahead and start importing a couple of things that we'll be needing. First of all, we need the use state and use effect. So for this one, I'm going to say import use state and also import use effect from React. All right, that's the first thing that we need. And also I need to import use axios. So remember the use axios thing that we created from the that's opening. So remember the use axios thing that we created from the previous tutorial, the authentication tutorial, that helps us actually get access to, the use axios API for authenticated requests. So we also need to import that. So I'm going to say import use axios from, and I think that is in // utils/ then use axios. There you go, that's it. Okay, so after importing that, the next thing that we need to go ahead and import is JWT code. So I'm going to import JWT code from JWT code, as simple as that. And I think that's pretty much what we want to do. And we already have Sweet Alerts. Let me open up my package JSON and let's see. There you go, we have Sweet Alerts. So we can still import Sweet Alerts, but for now I don't think we need it for anything, so let's just go ahead and leave that out, at least for now. And I want to indent my code so everything looks all right from over here. Now, just below this function, in between the space, I'm going to zoom in so you guys can actually see everything that's going on. We want to firstly go ahead and define a variable called base URL, and that one is the variable that's going to be holding our endpoint for the API. Now, if I come over to my browser, all right, there you go. This is our application. So let's refresh. Make sure you're connected to the internet so it gets the Bootstrap CDN, and everything should be working fine from over here. All right, that's perfect. So for this, I'm going to grab this endpoint and I'm going to paste it down here. As simple as that. That's what we want to do. But remember, we come over to /API. Now let's try that out. So I'm going to come over to /API and let's see what we have. So, all right, /API. Then if for any reason we do something like /register, then we should be able to get, is that working? Let's see. All right, there you go. So that's working. So we should be able to get this. So you want to put in this endpoint port 8000 /API without a slash at the back over here. All right, you can as well add a slash, but I'm going to show you guys the reason why we just left that out. And I want to define another constant variable. I'm going to call this one API, and this should inherit from this one over here, from the use axios. So what we're pretty much doing over here is instantiating the use axios function that we created in the previous tutorial, and we simply assigned the function to a variable called API. So in the future, we're going to be able to use this API variable to do things like api.post, api.delete, api.get. All right, hopefully you understand. So for now, this is what we have. All right, so after doing that, let's go ahead and actually get our to-dos. So the first thing that you want to do is go ahead and we can start off by actually creating a use state that's going to hold the to-dos. So I'm going to say const, and for this one, the first one, we're going to call it to do, and the next one, we're going to call it set to do. So after we've done this, then I'm just going to go ahead and pass this to use state. So I'm going to assign this variables that we created now to use state. And for this one, I think we could just stick with an empty array. And whenever we stick with an empty array, that means the objects that we're going to be getting from the API will be in an array or in a list. All right. But if for any reason we wanted to create them, we have to use a dictionary and do things like title and put in a string. I know you might not understand now, but let's just keep going. I'll explain more. Now, when you want to create a state like this, we use these two variables. And this is as simple as saying something like this, right? This is as simple as saying something like this exactly. But this time around, we want to use two variables. So we just put them in a list. The first one is going to be to do. The next one is going to be set to do. And just so you know, you could call this one banana after you guys that before, and you could call this one apple or milkshake, whatever you want. You can call it whatever you want. Even this API over here, you can still call it whatever you want. You can say something like hello, and even this BGR, you can call it whatever you want. But the ones that you should not call whatever you want are things like the use axios or the use state. All right. So let's stick with to do. And the normal convention is this: when you pass in whatever variable you want over here, then in the next one, you should pass in set. You should write set before passing in the to-do name again. For example, let's say I call this hello. Then over here, I'm going to do something like set hello. All right. Now, whenever we want to grab anything that's in this use state, if we call the hello, we're going to get whatever object that was in the list. But using the set hello, we're going to be able to set objects to the list. Let's keep going for now. Hopefully you guys will understand it when, we actually get deep into the tutorial. So the first one is set to do. The other one is to do, and we assign this to use states. Now, what's the first thing that I want to do? Let's just go ahead and write a very simple use effect. So I'm going to say use effect. And whenever you want to call, an API or whatever, you should use effects. Okay, so you might be asking, what does use effect actually do in React? So the use effect hook pretty much allows us to perform side effects in functional components, just like we are creating now. And side effects are actions that are not directly related to the rendering component, but are necessary for doing things like data fetching, which we are about to do now, get some data from the API, or, subscriptions, or manually changing the DOM, or even, pretty much performing any action that affects the external, feature. Let me use that word, or let's say the external word in our React. All right. So when I say external word, that means, for example, now we want to do something like fetching data, which means we are going out of our React application. We are going to be going into Django to get some data. So that's what I mean by that affects the external word. So we pretty much use effects hook for things like data fetching, which is what we're about to do now. So for us to do that, it's quite simple. All you just need to do is define use effect, initialize it like this. And in there, you want to create a function. So we're going to create an arrow function in there, just like this. And that's pretty much it. Now, as we have defined this, we can as well just go ahead and call our API and say something like api.get and pass all that in. But the best practice, or the best way to do this, is to actually define the function that you want to use to get whatever you want, then instantiate it in here in the use effect. So how do we do that? But before we go ahead and continue, I want to pass in the dependency array over here. So if you don't pass in the dependency array, then you will notice this bug where your Django server will keep running forever. All right. It will keep initializing and calling this API endpoints non-stop. All right. But if you pass in a dependency array, it will only run once whenever you request this function. Okay, that's it. Let's go ahead and write the function. So I'm going to say const, and let's call it, I think fetch to do's is the best thing that we can use in this case. And we can say fetch to do's should be equal to, it's going to be an arrow function. So I'm going to make it like this. And since we're going to be calling an API, you want to use async await. All right. So I'm going to pass in async over here. Okay, not there, but in here. All right. So I said fetch to do's should be equal to async, and I did this over here. And what we need to do now is go ahead and say something like, and say await. So I'm going to say API, which is this one that we defined over here. Then we want to call the get method. So I'm going to say API.get. So what's wrong with the await? Okay, yeah, it was loading up. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the API that actually gets all the to-dos. Now I'm going to pass in API and to-do. Okay, if we pass in the to-do, then we need to pass in the ID of the user that owns the to-do for you to actually grab all the to-do. So I'm going to say to-do 1. Okay, that's perfect. Now what do you notice? It says buy milk and buy a new phone. So all this to-do over here is for the user number 1. Now, this API is what I want to copy and paste in here. All right. So this is the API we want to request to get all these to-dos. But JavaScript is not going to understand this, or let's say React is not going to understand this, because we need to pass it in a way that React will actually know that this is what we're trying to access. So let's go ahead and break this down. I'm going to grab the base URL. Remember, this is everything that we have in the base URL. So everything from the H to the I, we're going to replace it with the base URL, variable, and we're going to give a space and add plus. All right. Now, are you following along? So we added that. Now, the next thing that we want to do is the to-do. The one is supposed to be dynamic. So we are supposed to get the one based on whichever user is logged in. But for the to-do, that's actually constant and static. So I'm just going to put that in a string like this. And you want to add another plus. So now we need to go ahead and concatenate this one with the user that's actually logged in. And for that, let's use JWT decode to get the ID of the user that's logged in currently. So how do we do that? I'm firstly going to say const token. And for this one, let's go ahead and get local storage. Then we're going to say dot get item. And what item do we want to get? We called it auth tokens. And if you don't believe, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys that now. Okay, we're getting this error. Let's get rid of that. And let me show you guys. So if we get over here, I'm going to hop over to my development tools, come over to application, come over to local storage, and come over here. Now, what do you notice? This is auth tokens. So that's what we called it. Now, I want to grab the auth token. And if we grab the auth token, that means it's getting this refresh token, right? So from the refresh token actually keeps track of which user is logged in our application. How do we confirm that? Let's hop over to JWT.io. And so if you see right now, what I just did is I grabbed this one over here. I can even go ahead and edit the value. Edit value. Let me make this like this so we can actually see everything that's in there. Now I just want to copy that. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna copy everything in the refresh token, and then the JWT.io, let's paste it over here. All right, what do you notice? As you can see, it gets the token type is refresh. Now it gets the user ID. So the user ID of the person that's logged in is 1. Their username is Destiny. Their email is this. Their image is this. Verified is false. So now we keep track of all this information in that token that's over there. All right. So now we need to grab all this information that's here. We need to get it in our React. We need a way to get it. Now that's why we use JWT decode. So all we just need to do is over here, down here, we need to say const, and I'm going to pass in the code. So, okay, let's just call this decoded, because this one is what's going to go ahead and decode the auth token. Now I'm going to pass in JWT decode, and guess what? I'm going to pass in token. So remember, this token is what is the gibberish text that looks like this. Now what we did is pretty much grab this token and pass it into JWT decode. JWT decode is just something like this JWT.io that we used over here. Now when you pass in this token, it's now going to have access to all this value over here. So we can be able to grab all this value from this decoded variable. That means you can say something like decoded.user. What was it called here? That's its user ID. So we can say something like decoded.user ID. And now we get the user ID that we're supposed to put in here. But how about we just set this to a variable and say something like user ID? I'm still going to call it user ID. You could call this banana. All right. But I want to call it user ID. But don't call this banana. Call this whatever you have over here. Let's say you want to get the full name, then it's going to be decoded or full name or decoded the username. All right. So now, since we've done that, now I want to grab the user ID and put it in here. As simple as that. Instead of 1. Now it's going to get the ID of the user that's logged in. And I think that's pretty much it. Finally, let's just go ahead and add in the final slash, because if you take a close look at it, then you see that we have a slash here. So to add in that final slash, just put in plus and add in the slash. That's it. We are done. So now, all we just need to do is go ahead and call a response. So if everything works out well and we actually got some data from the API, we also want to go ahead and define a function that's going to grab the data. So what can we do? Firstly, let's go ahead and start off by logging that data. So you could just go ahead and log res, and let's see if it actually got anything. Now we're going to get back here, come over to console, And let's refresh this console. Okay, it says invalid property class. Is that the issue? You know what? I'm gonna log out. We've been logged out, and I'm gonna try logging in again. Okay, now I'm logged in. It got the refresh token. It says we are logged in, and okay, yeah, we need to come over to the to-do to be able to see if anything was actually all right. There you go. It says uncutting promise cannot deconstruct this. So what could be going wrong here? So as you can see, we're not getting anything over here, but the first thing that we need to do is just go ahead and set to do. So let's set to do to whatever. Okay, yeah, that's the issue. So we need to pass in res.data. So now there is going to be a data keyword over here that's going to be able to grab whatever data we get from the API, like the user, the title, the completed, and all this data. All right. So if you pass in res.data, now let's get back here and refresh this and see if that works. So we refresh this, and okay, seems this is not still working. So let's go ahead and actually set to do. Then we're gonna see what's going on. Oh yeah, I know why this is not working now. Okay, so so far we are just writing this function, but we haven't actually called this fetch to do anywhere. So we haven't called it anywhere. All right, that was an oversight. So let's go ahead and finish this off. I'm just going to console log res.data, and I'm also going to set to do res.data. So when res.data is the information that we get from the API. All right. Now that we've done this, I want you to grab the fetch to do and just call it in here. As simple as that. And we are done. All right. So let's get back here. And now what do you notice? We are getting back something over here. Now we can get buy milk and buy a new mouse, because we console log the res.data. That's perfect. So guys, we are pretty much done. All we just need to do now is go ahead and show the data that we are getting over here. All right. So when we pass in the data here, then you're going to see buy milk and buy a new mouse. Right now, this buy milk is just the dummy data. If you search for buy milk, there's it over there. As you can see, it's just the dummy data. We're not actually getting anything from the database. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and pass it in dynamically. All right. So how do we do that? Now, the first thing that we need to do is just come over here. So this is the div that's holding it, right? This is the div that's holding it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy this div and paste it down a couple more times to see if that's actually the div. All right, there you go. That's the div. So we want to run a for loop. We're going to run a for loop over here at the top of this div. Now, how do you run a for loop in React? We're going to say todo.map, and we're going to pass in, it's going to be like a function. All right. So this function is going to take in, todo.map, and this function is going to take in a parameter. I'm just going to call it to do. And for this one, it's an arrow function. I'm going to bring this down. So take note of what's going on here. I defined I called todo.map. This to do tech keyword over here is pretty much the one that we had here, as you can see. Because I told you guys that whenever you want to get all the data, this is the one you use to get all the data. When you want to set a data to the use state, this is the one you use to set data. That's why over here we say set to do, then we set whatever we got from the API to the set to do. I don't know if you're understanding what's going on. So over here, we call the to do, the map, and we passed in a parameter. You could call this whatever you want, all right? But I just want to call mine to do. And I'm going to copy this closing one and just put it down here. All right. So now when we come over here, what should we see? Let's see what's going on. Okay. Oh, and there you have it. So as you can see, now we can see two of this. That's because we have two things in our API. Now let's go ahead and change up all the dummy text. And instead of buy milk, let's make that dynamic. So I'm just going to say to do dot, what is it called in the API? So it's called title. So I'm going to say to do dot title, and let's see how that works. There you go. As you can see, we are now successfully getting data and displaying it over here on our page. Buy milk, buy a new mouse. That's because we have those over here. Now, how about we try adding in some more to-dos to our database that belongs to Destiny and see how that actually works. So I'm going to log into my database. I'm going to come over to to-dos, and I can actually change the buy milk. So let's change the buy milk to something like buy phone. I'm gonna save and add another one. So the owner of this to-do should still be Destiny. And I'm gonna say something like rake leaves. I'm gonna add another one. I'm gonna say something like write Django and React code, and I'm gonna save this. So right now, if we get back to our API over here, or to our client side, and refresh the page, then now new things should be coming in from the database. There you go. Buy a phone, buy a new mouse, rake leaves, write Django and React code, directly coming from the API, and that's perfect. So I think that's pretty much everything that we want to do for now. In the next one, we're going to go ahead and start working with either marking the to-do as completed or deleting the to-do, or even adding a new to-do. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and learned something new. If for any reason you don't understand any line of code, just copy the line, paste it in the comment section, and tell me to explain it to you, and I'll try my possible best to explain it. Consider subscribing, as to really mean the world to me. And until the next video, mad love, peace out.